and welcome to the Vision of Hope Show. I am your host and your producer, Deborah Ringo. We have a great guest here for you tonight, Mr. Ringo. He's been with us before, and he's coming up with us with the topic, transition. Well, good evening, Mr. Ringo.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm well.
Very well. So glad to have you tonight. We want the audience to know that Mr. Ringo is back on the show. He was here a few months ago, and he did a very good teaching on the topic depression, right?
Correct.
And it was a very good show. So we're here, and we're going to talk about some different topics, and one of them will be Mr. Ringo is going to start speaking on transition, and then we're going to go into seasons and the seasons that we're going into, because we know that when these seasons come around, that sometimes people have hard times transitioning into them and have a hard time just being into the season, the holiday season. So we want you to sit back and relax and know that the Vision of Hope is here to help you here at the Win TV in Windsor, Connecticut. So we're so glad to be back on the air. And right now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ringo, and he's going to take us from here. Enjoy.
Good evening, everyone. I want to talk a little bit about transition. And one thing about when you begin to thinking about transition, that could be a very broad area, transition, whether it be in death, whether it be in a divorce, whether it be in marriage, whether you're a mother for the first time. And transition can play a big part in everyone's life. If you were working and lost your job, and that's a transition. So we said,
yes.
what is a transition? A transition is coming out of one thing, going into something new that you never experienced. But how would you handle your transition when you find yourself in a transition situation or transition mode? So in this time season, that holiday season, and maybe someone there have lost a loved one, or maybe have celebrated the birth of a loved one. And it's a transition because it plays on your mind, emotions. There's a lot of things going on even in your transition. And then one thing that you look at, that even when someone that came out of prison, they begin to have to transition, a transition period to take place to, they've been confined for so many years.
Right.
But now they stepped into, per se, a new world, a new society that they left going to prison one way, but came out, things have changed computer-wise, and telephones and cell phones. So that's a transition. Yes. So even sometimes in your transition, fear factor do play a part in your transition in some cases.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Ringo. Absolutely. Transition is happens in life regularly. And when I think of it being a process. You agree?
I agree.
It's a process of a period of time of changing. And I think about, I love the example of someone coming from out of the prison from being incarcerated. From what I understand, not from experience, but from what I understand, incarceration is a whole different world.
Yeah.
They have like their own little world. So when you step out of that into the real world, then, as you said, there has to be a transition that takes place. And a lot of times, some people makes that transition and is successful, and some people don't. You know, well, why do you think that some people do and some people don't? Just in general with transitions.
Well, depending on how severe the transition is for them. You find a lot of people that been incarcerated come out and feel like their self-esteem is, you know, they want to do better. And they can deal with that transition. Then some people that can't cope with that new beginning and would trans back to that old person. That's why the Bible says, you know, the old nature of man, the old process. So it depends on, in my opinion, the severity of the transition that one has been faced with.
Okay. So in other words, as you were speaking, I started thinking about it's the mindset also. If your mind, if you're focused and your mind is set on something that you want to transition into, you will do that. And sometimes, as you said, this transition is not always an easy process. So sometimes people don't want to have to work at the transition, but they want it like popcorn.
Yeah.
So if it's not like popcorn, they back off from it. And when you back off from it, would you say that you find yourself in the same situation that you were in before you started the transition?
Well, it's just like, for example, if a father that's been absent from his family for whatever reason and decide to reconcile with that particular family. So now it's a transition for him to admit that I'm stepping up to the plate to be the dad or the husband, whatever the case may be. And also a transition for the wife or the children to accept their dad back into their life. So they would try to make it work. So, but even in the process of transition, it could be some hurt.
Yep.
It could be some anger
Yep.
come about even in that transition, trying to make it better. So the question you asked me, so would they go back into, but they might go back into a deep depression, depending on how severe the transition was and what they would transition into.
Okay. All right.
With who.
Right. Okay. So, because it could be a thing or a person.
Yeah.
So, I like the part of bringing out the points of hurt and anger and deep depression, because a lot of times we're faced with those things even before we start a transition. Those things we have to deal with, and sometimes even fear.
Yeah.
You know, fear will grip you when you are branching out into something new, or you're trying to make a change or a transition, as we're talking about tonight. Fear will start to try to grip you to stop you from moving on to the next level. And I believe at that point, that's when we need people in our lives that believe in us and support us and help push us along the way, right?
Right.
And then the other thing I was thinking about with transition is that the seasons that we're coming into now, the holiday season, in another week or two, it's going to be Thanksgiving. And then next month is going to be Christmas. And then it's going to be a new year. A new year. So a lot of time people are making transitions even in this season. You agree?
That's correct.
Because now we're out of the summer and we're into the fall, and then we're going to go into the winter. And what can you tell people how to handle? Because this is where the depression comes in, and this is where the loneliness come in. This is where the discouragement comes in a lot of time, where people begin to, because everything is moving and shifting, and sometimes you want to be a part of all of that, but you're having a problem to transitioning into it. So,
well, like you stated, that we'll, as we call, going into the fall part of this calendar year. And a lot of times that, depending on what you bring over until the fall season, and sometimes you still try to bring what transpired in the summer months over to the winter months. Right. And a lot of times you have to be able to, even the process might be that you might have to eliminate, downsize certain things in the winter months. But yet you don't want to one thing, you don't want to give up things that happen in the summer to transition in the wintertime. Those that have trees and have squirrels, and we got a bunch of squirrels, and you can see them squirrels constantly moving with straws building nests and nuts, and early when they realize that wintertime is coming.
Right, right.
And you can see the different animals, nature begin to transition.
Yes, yes.
And get prepared for what's ahead, you know, the wintertime.
Right.
So,
yes,
but sometimes that people mindset, I had a good time this summer and I don't want to let it go, and so sometimes you don't have the mindset or don't want the mindset to transition into the season.
Right,
and it's just like almost like you see elderly people that you feel they got the youth and they refuse to transition until the age where they at.
Right, right.
Because they remember when they was 35 and 25 but then they 75 and 80 and they still want to be a 16 or 25-year-old person and too afraid to transition to where they are.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of times that's why injury come about. That, you know, just a lot of things happen because they don't want to accept that they are gracefully aging.
Right, right.
So transition hit a lot of people. So you're gonna find people in this time that still got the summer mind.
Right, right. Okay.
You know, and they're gonna have the summer mind. So they're gonna realize that, man, winter's coming.
Yeah.
So if a squirrel can prepare for the winter, are we greater than a squirrel?
Yes. Yep. So I mean that makes a lot of sense, and that's a great example to use the squirrel, because the squirrel is constantly moving and constantly piling up and getting stuff together, pulling, and they real fast about it. They real fast about it because they realize that the seasons is changing and they're getting ready to transition over, and it's really difficult to know that people don't want to transition into the next level in their life.
Yeah.
Because each level of life brings something different. You know, and you're not going to know what aging brings if you don't want to embrace gracefully aging.
Yeah.
You know, transitioning over to that. And I love the fact that you used, because the mindset, if the mind is still back in the teen years or want to be back there, then it's a constant fight and a pull and a tug to move on over to the other side as far as transitioning into the graceful life. You know, I believe that in life you gotta move on because others are coming up, and if you try to stay there, we just really get in the way, and you don't even fit into that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't really fit into that. You were gonna say something.
Yeah. One thing I'm looking at, and it's almost like a 401k plan.
Okay.
You know, that once you get employed and per se the projection is to retire from the company, and so they offer you a benefit package, or you want to put in your 401k, and you begin to put money in your 401k, and over the period of time that once you reach that retirement, then you can withdraw out of your 401k.
Right, right.
So there's a form of transitioning because you prepare yourself that once I retire, then when I reach a certain age, I can withdraw.
Right, right.
So even in transitioning, you put in, but you can get out. The benefits of what you put in,
right?
If you transition, according to step by step.
Right, right. I love that, because that brings me back to what I was saying about transitioning over to a new age. There's benefits.
Yeah.
There's benefits in being 20. There's benefits in being 25, 30, 40, 50, and 60. So there's no reason to fear going on to that new step in your life, because some things you got to leave behind in order to gain what's ahead. Also, I wanted to thank you so much. I really hope that the audience is enjoying this, the transitioning show. Also, we wanted to just remind you of the email that you can email us and let us know. Please let us know what you think about the show. It's dead Ringo. It's DED Ringo at yahoo.com. So it's DED Ringo at yahoo.com. And let us know what you think about the show and any questions that you may have, or how we can be of even more of a help to you. We have self-esteem courses that we offer. And in those self-esteem courses, we offer them in a one-on-one setting, and we also offer them in a group setting. And what we do is we begin to teach on, the name of the course is Building Your Self-Esteem, which the Vision of Hope is a stem from that. So building your self-esteem brings you to keep building, making your disappointments and insecurities work for you, working on your self-esteem, your motivation, loving yourself. Because sometimes we don't love ourselves enough to trust that we're going to be okay when we transition. You know, we don't, it's just that we want to stay stuck in where we are because it's been good. But God wants to give us something better. That's why he allows us to age, because there's something better than when we was 20 years old. That was then, and this is now. Also, we talk about tapping into your resources, being positive, thinking positive. We talk about confidence, letting go of your past that will set you free. So we offer these courses, again, on a one-on-one basis in a group setting. So if you're interested, you can call to the Win TV and leave a message for me, or you can email me at dedringo@yahoo.com. All right, now back to the show. It has been great, Mr. Ringo, to have you here. And I want to talk a little bit about the different seasons also that we're coming into. Of being in Thanksgiving, of being thankful. What does that, just elaborate a little bit on thankfulness for us.
Well, one thing when you think about being thankful, it's not about the turkey and what go with the turkey and the stuffing, the meal that you might prepare for that particular day. But when you say being thankful, it's just a day that has been celebrated. Everyone come together on Thanksgiving to give thanks.
Right.
But when it's not only about food, but thank God for your life, health, and strength.
Yes.
And thank God for just being God, because it's very important in these days and time to allow God to allow us to tell God that we are thankful, we're appreciative for the things that he have done thus far. So a lot of times we would buy a whole bunch of turkeys and to my point that, and I think that when you're being thankful, and we can be thankful and eat all the turkey we want, all the yams or whatever the case may be, and yet we can eat for 2 hours and stop speaking the same day for 20 hours. Right. But that's just a symbol that we sit down and break bread together. But being thankful to me is to give God praise and give God thanks for what he have done. So not only for food, but life, health, and strength. Yes.
And also I agree with you, because it's so important to know who's the source of everything that's around us. And also, and just to, what does it take to just be thankful? To say I'm thankful for, it doesn't take a lot to be able to say that. So keeping in mind that we're into the season already, because we're into November. And we want to make sure that we're thankful. There's a lot of people that will not be able to say that they're thankful, or won't have an opportunity to say that they're thankful. There's some people that won't even have food to eat. But even if we are into hard times, we still need to learn that we need to be thankful, And also I thought about the term gratefulness. Can you expound a little bit on that term?
Well, grateful to me, is something that is appreciative. That is something that on the inside that you say, I'm so grateful. That when you say, I'm grateful for having life, health, and strength, or whatever the case may be, that is something you hold dear to your heart.
Yes.
That you are grateful. So anything that you are grateful for, in the same turn, you won't abuse it or misuse it because it's something hold dear, very dear to your heart. So that's what I think about grateful. You just, word can't really express.
Right, right.
Or action can't put it into words, or words can put it in action, how you really feel about being grateful.
Right, yeah. Okay, so to add to what you're saying as far as being grateful, I agree wholeheartedly. That's something that has to come from within. You got to be grateful from within. And also, you know, a lot of times that can hold up our transition because we're not grateful for the little that we already have.
Yeah.
You know, but yet we're trying to striving and we're pulling and tugging to get the much. But how are we going to get the much if we can't be thankful and we can't be grateful for the little, you know, that we already have? Because a lot of times we want to start up here, but in order to get up here, we can't forget, you know, that we got to lay the groundwork first and then work ourselves up. And as we're coming up the ladder, we got to be thankful and we got to be grateful because we're going into greater things. And that's exactly like moving into our seasons. Our seasons change. As you were speaking earlier, we're over the summer. You know, we had the spring, the summer. Now the seasons are changing. We're going into the fall now. And then it's going to change into the winter. So we gotta move with the seasons. We gotta go with the seasons. You know, it doesn't matter about what we don't like or what we don't want to give up. But the seasons are going to come irregardless. Yeah. They're going to come into play irregardless. So we have to, you talked about our mindset. We got to have a mindset and recognize that fall requires this. Winter requires this. So we got to be ready for that. So also in the change of season, I thought about what you said about deep depression. People get into a deep depression because a lot of times in the winter, people can't get out. In the cold, they're in the house. So unless you are doing some things, you know, in that season, you find yourself struggling in being happy. Some people aren't happy when the holidays come. Yeah. Would you expound on that a little bit? And we're gonna get ready to close out.
Okay. One thing I want to say that just real quickly, as I was sitting there and about grateful, and what came to me, and the Lord dropped it in my spirit just a while ago. He said, because sometimes experience what you have to go through, whether good time or bad time, that will put you in a place that I'm so grateful to God or to God, because maybe you might have been strict with cancer and God healed you. Or maybe you might have been homeless and have a place to live, and all of a sudden you're so grateful because there was an impact in your life that caused you to say, I'm grateful from on the inside.
Right.
And you talk about during the holiday, a lot of people don't like these holidays because, and most times the reason why is maybe because of a death in the family, maybe because a divorce, maybe because a child or somebody have died or something, and so the mother yearning for the lost child, and maybe, you know, a lot of things that people look at, they always say, I remember this time last year, such and such was here.
Yes.
Or I remember the last time that my house was here, but all of a sudden my house got burned up last year. So sometimes it have to be some tragedy, something that's devastating, detrimental to have happened prior to a holiday. And so people kind of like, I don't want to be bothered with that because, you know, I can remember, you know, it hurt And so I'll be glad when the holiday is over with. So that's what, so but we have to just gird up.
All right. Well, we are at the end of our show. And we want to just thank you, Mr. Ringo, for coming again.
Amen.
And being on the show. And that it has been dynamic as usual. A man of wisdom. And I really pray and hope that the community has grabbed on to what you need. You might not have needed it tonight, but one day you might need it. And you can always get the CD by calling the Win TV, the station, or you can email me and let me know that you want it. We're on demand on YouTube. You can look and listen at the show again. So we have been it's just been great to be here, to be of some help to you out of the TV land at Win TV, and talking on the subject of transition. Transition is a process. Be encouraged if you're transitioning. Be encouraged until you get there. Don't stop until you obtain it. Don't give up hope, because there is still hope in a hopeless situation. And we were talking about the seasons changing, being thankfulness, gratefulness, and moving into your season. What is your season? We're going to come back next month in December, and I would like to talk a little bit about the new season that you're working in and that you've accepted. So remember to embrace where you are, know where you are, enjoy where you are, and remember, this has been Deborah Ringo, your host and your producer at the Vision of Hope Show. Just remember this, you can make it.